welcome to another episode of Witty CFB. And on today's episode, we got the Southern Fried Gentleman back at it here, dude. It's great for you to be here, and I'm super excited that we're able to follow up our previous conversation from January.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here. I am the Southern Fried Gentleman of Southern Fried Sports. You can find me there on YouTube. Tonight, however, I decided I'm going to be Gamecock JD and one of my other affiliates, Greenville Sports Media. You can follow me there on X at Greenville Sports Media, GSM_Gamecocks on Twitter. I just wrote an article about Paul Maneri and how can we please stop it with the fire him already? Like, please get out of here with that nonsense. But I'm always happy to spread a little Gamecock gospel, if you will.
Exactly, and I was just thinking about, we're approaching spring football. I usually at this time of the year, I'm kind of just thinking about, which teams to talk about, and I've been just feeling SEC football, and I figured why not, get a little Gamecock gospel going and be able to talk about South Carolina football, since at least in my opinion, they're really a piece or two away from really making some noise in the playoff. I mean, obviously in the 2024 season, really strong season. I mean, I think they obviously lost the game to the point where, hey, they weren't going to make that spot. But now you look at their roster. Now they have LaNorris Sellers. They bring in Air Nolan, who is essentially going to be an insurance policy and someone who you can develop in the quarterback room. You got a really strong receiving core, and also adding a couple pieces defensively. So with that said, you're looking at what's probably going to be their recruiting class right now. Are there a couple guys that kind of stick out to you? And also, if you were Shane Beamer and his staff, who specifically would you be targeting in this window here?
Yeah, that's a lot, and there's a lot that I will have to say about all of that. So you mentioned the wide receivers. You mentioned Air Nolan. Let me start there with the quarterback room. LaNorris Sellers coming back, and then you're able to add in a previous 5-star from Ohio State and Air Nolan. Is that not just like a cool name anyway?
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Right. I mean, too bad we're an Under Armour school, because that, to me, that feels like it's got Nike Air Jordan written all over it.
Exactly.
So he won't be getting that NIL deal. But the quarterback room, though, I mean, with Sellers, Nolan, we saw them get in the young recruit Cutter Woods, Dante Reno. He took reps last year as well. The quarterback room at South Carolina has never been in better shape. I mean that honestly. We are long past the days of Lorenzo Nunez starting a game against Missouri on the road, or Perry Orth throwing a late interception against the Kentucky Wildcats. I mean, golly, if he had just put a little air on that ball. But, I mean, we are long past the days, though, of quarterback attrition at South Carolina, which is amazing to me. I mean, that's literally, I mean, when you're going to build a team, you build it up the middle. The number one position in football, I said this the other day on my show, the number one position in football is quarterback. But guess what else you got to have? Interior offensive linemen, interior defensive linemen, linebackers. You got to build up the middle, and then you can branch out. The same goes for basketball, with having a good center and a good point guard, and baseball, having a good catcher, a good pitcher, a good shortstop. All of those are the closest to the ball. The closer you get to the ball, the more it matters. And so the quarterback room's in fantastic shape. Rob, can I ask you this, though, about the wide receivers real quick?
Yeah.
Have you heard this Nick Harbor story?
No, I haven't.
Oh, I cannot wait to enlighten you. I can't wait to hear your reaction to this. So, Nick Harbor, his dad apparently figured out there was an issue when they played against Texas A&M, and a ball went right through Nick Harbor's hands and hit him in the face mask.
Oh, I love that little what a ball magnet.
Okay, they figured out he was blind. He's got contacts now. He can see the ball better than ever. And he's not running track this year, focusing solely on football.
I guess better late than never to get the vision right.
Right. I mean, he has the tools, but he's never really been a wide receiver. So it'll be interesting to see how this transition though takes place. Will the contacts help him? Will he be able to see and catch the ball better? Can he truly be a wide receiver one for the Gamecocks?
Exactly. And that's really going to be I think to add on to that too, that's really going to be the conversation with South Carolina's offense. When you had Rocket Sanders, it was a little bit more complimentary, especially when you know that Sellers is such a threat running the ball. But now that you're playing, some of the strongest defenses in all of college football, they're going to hone in on that. So to me, the big question is, how does LaNorris Sellers develop as a passer, and can these receivers that they're bringing in and developing, can they be these explosive weapons and get some bigger kind of chunk plays? Because I think last year was a little bit more kind of sort of a rhythm. So I'd be curious if they can kind of add on to that this year.
Yeah, I'll be interested. You just mentioned Rocket. Number one, I'm interested to see where he ends up going in the draft, at what round, and to whom. I think he's going to be a really good NFL running back. That play against Missouri, that game-winning play, to me, that's still ridiculous. But to me, I did see a picture. You mentioned spring football and stuff getting started. Rashul face on the transfer.
Yeah.
Dude, he's got a picture out there. He looks cut up. He is studded up. He very well could be that next top running back. And I mean, you're right. We're going to need it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Because now, no, I'm listening.
Yeah. Oh, no, you're fine. 1,000-yard, though, running back. I mean, we're going to need something like that if we're going to continue to improve.
Yeah, that's what I mean, too, because South Carolina is in a really good spot, at least offensively. But I'm definitely kind of curious to see that, too, because for the most part, I'd say Sellers, yeah, did he have a couple moments of just being a young quarterback? Yes, but for the most part, there are only a handful of times where I really sit there and said to myself, wow, that was kind of a boneheaded decision. So I'm definitely kind of fascinated to see how Mike Shula in particular kind of helps him with that decision-making process too, especially when they're going to be in these bigger games, such as, we talked about this off camera too, when they had that stretch of LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, A&M, and Ole Miss.
Yeah, well, and now we're getting a lot of those games flipped in the reverse. So I think you mentioned going to Death Valley.
Yeah.
And no, I'm not talking about Clemson, South Carolina. I'm talking about the real Death Valley. Y'all always want to throw shots about the real USC. So how about the real Death Valley? Gamecocks have to go there. Honestly, I hate the preseason hype. I am very uncomfortable going into the season as a pre-10, pre-15, whichever one, wherever they may fall. That scares the daylights out of me going and playing Virginia Tech in Atlanta. I'd rather fly under the radar because Virginia Tech's going to be like, oh, preseason matchup against a top 15 team. It's going to be a slugfest. I don't want any part of it.
Yeah, especially too when you have that neutral site too. That's always one of those games where, for the most part, probably in week 0, everyone's going to be like, all right, South Carolina's probably going to win by 10, but you never know. Some of those games are the ones where you end up just completely dismissing it, and then all of a sudden we're talking about an upset at the very beginning of the season. Now we're talking about South Carolina's season in a totally different context now.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, and you're starting out 0-1 out of conference. You still have Clemson on the back end that you got to play. I mean, the schedule, though. I mean, talking about going to, let's see, we get Oklahoma back at home. We get Alabama at home. But we got to go to Texas A&M, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the toughest matchups in the country too, especially when they're going to have Marcel Reed too, and they're kind of in a similar story to South Carolina in the sense that that's going to be Marcel Reed. The biggest question with him is, can he develop into a legit passing threat? Because right now he's pretty much a glorified running back who has a little bit of an arm.
There was a few plays he looked like Lamar Jackson.
Exactly.
When South Carolina played him last year, and I was like, can we chill out, y'all? Can we stop this dude now? And speaking of stopping dudes, though, to tie this back into the roster and talk, and even the schedule, there are no preseason games for colleges. You mentioned the spring window and players that I would want at this point. I want the roster to be solidified already. I don't want there to be any needs in this spring transfer window. You know what I mean? They're in spring practice already. That's where we see Sellers to little brother Sellers videos and face on pictures of him with his calves and his hamstrings and everything. Like, we're already there, so I don't want to see there be a time where we still have needs. However, on the defensive side of the ball, I'm very concerned. Only because of everything we're losing. When you talk about Demetrius Knight, Debo Williams. By the way, Rob, biggest NFL combine slander ever was Debo Williams not getting an invite to the NFL combine. He's literally averaged like 100 tackles ever since he's been a Gamecock. When is that not good enough to get you an invite to the NFL combine?
Yeah, it does kind of make you wonder.
But then Demetrius Knight, he came in, had 56 tackles, but he's at the combine. And yeah, Demetrius Knight's great, don't get me wrong. But Debo not being invited, to me, that was just like, that was spit in the face for Gamecock fans. But I'm worried about the defense and if they're going to be able to replace, Nick Emanwari, Tonka Hemingway, TJ Sanders, Kyle Kennard. If I look up and down the roster, which I have pulled up, we'll do that in a little bit. I'm worried about the defensive production. I don't know these dudes. You know what I mean? I have no idea what to expect from the defensive side of the ball. I think I know what I'm going to get from the offense. I think with Mike Shula, as you mentioned, But man, the defense, it scares the daylights out of me, Rob.
Yeah, because it's one of those things too. We're gonna now as the season's progressing, as we're getting ready, we're gonna keep having these conversations over and over again in terms of question marks of new people coming into, because now with just how much people are transferring and more or less, teams are just going to have such a more difficult time having legit depth now. So sometimes it just comes down to, hey, you're kind of just the next man up, and it's just a big question mark, because when you were second, third string last season, and now you're competing with a transfer coming in. It's just kind of a wild card, and part of that is, hey, you might see some spring ball, you might get an idea or two, or you might have to rely on an insider such as yourself who studies the team, who follows the team, who has those kind of inside connections in terms of who we should be looking for.
Right. Yeah, and again, there at this point, I've seen more basketball transfers than football transfers, really. I feel like everything's been picked through in that regard. Like, I don't see there being many more additions, unless, of course, all these coaches canceling their spring games because of tampering. Unless there's some tampering that happens after some of these schools have spring games and coaches lay eyes on them, maybe. But as far as anybody I'd like hand pick right now, I couldn't name one.
Yeah, or even just a particular position room where you say to yourself, hey, right at this moment in time, I'm kind of questioning that until I see a little bit more.
Defensive line and linebacker. I think the edge on the defensive line, I think we're good there. I mean, I could look, like I said, I have the roster pulled up. I'll pull up a few of those guys. Um, but of
Because
course, we
South
got,
Carolina, yeah, because
yeah, we've
South
got,
Carolina last year, I think to me their biggest strength in terms of their defensive line was just the speed. Like when you watch them get off the ball, that those were the kind of the different when they won some of those bigger games, such as we can talk about how they won that Clemson game. That difference was how quickly they were they were getting penetration and they were containing Cade Klubnik in the pocket. That was one of the biggest differences in that game, for example.
oh, yeah, absolutely. Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart were beasts coming off the edge. But we do have people like Desmond Umazulo. He's on the edge, 6'6", 255. And then, of course, I mentioned Dylan Stewart. But to me, we've added a lot of edge players. I think we need to beef up on the interior defensive line, especially losing, like I said, Tonka, TJ, and Alex.
Right.
That's 3 defensive tackles. And to me, that's one of the biggest things. Now, can some of these guys get in and beef up? Absolutely. I mean, I'm scrolling down. Let me see if I can get down to the big numbers here. But we've got plenty of defensive backs coming in. We did get a linebacker from Florida State and a linebacker from Alabama. So I'm not so concerned on the backside as much as I am with, like you mentioned, what would scare me the most is interior defensive linemen. It took me to get to player 44, number 44, Monkel Goodwin, 6'4", 305. He's a senior. Never heard of him. I've never heard of the guy in my life. Can he be the guy that steps up? You got Brian Thomas Jr. coming back. I've heard of him. That'll be a good one. And then you've got Rondarius Porter, 6', 295. He can't be an interior defensive lineman. He's too small. The offensive line I'm perfectly comfortable with. You got guys like Mark Key Anderson, Ja'Kai Moore, Cam Pringle, Tree Babalade, Boaz Stanley, a transfer. I'm completely comfortable with the offensive line. But the defensive line, the interior, it scares the daylights out of me.
Exactly, because the offensive line, I'd say for the most part, was pretty consistent last year. Now, granted, when you have a guy like Sellers who can scramble, you can rely on the read option. It's a little bit different in terms of what exactly you're asking your offensive line to do. Because just like the defensive line, a lot of those guys you have to be a little bit more athletic, particularly if you're running some of those zone runs, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're looking on the defense side of the ball. I'd say for the most part, the cornerback room, I think you're doing all right. You don't really see too many holes there, but it's going to be more or less, when you see these other teams exploit South Carolina. To me, the most obvious, exactly what you said, is running it right down their throats and seeing, hey, are you are you gonna make them have to put 6-7 in the box every play, and then test and then spread those corners out and going from there.
Right. Oh, yeah, from the defensive back room, we do have DQ Smith coming back. We have Kilgore coming back, Gerald Kilgore. I don't know if Jalen Kilgore is coming back. I think he's done. I think he's going to the draft. I think Gerald, though, is his little brother. And then apparently Swain, Vickery, Vicari, Vickery Swain, he's suspended right now.
Yeah.
He was probably going to be Q or CB1. The defensive back room scares me a little bit too. That one's one. Torian Gray, he's done great work with them. But again, I don't know a lot of them. I know 2 guys, Kilgore, or 3, Kilgore, Swain, and DQ Smith, whom I trust, who I know. Until I get these guys on the field and see them against actual competition, I don't know if I trust that side of the defense either. The whole, man, thanks, man. God, this season's going to be rough for Gamecock fans.
Yeah, but that's the whirlwind of it though, because that's a trade off that you get because last year, we all hyped up South Carolina because we said, they got 6+ starters on the defense side of the ball who are all seniors, and now that they go away, a couple of people transfer, got some guys coming back up, and that's just part of the trade off is you get that's kind of what, like, for example, that's what Clemson has this year. They have a bunch of seniors, bunch of guys coming back, and all the hype's going to be on them now, and it's kind of just flip flop, and that's just kind of just the push and pull of college football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then like I said, you've got us starting potentially as a top 15 preseason team. Well, not you, but all the media pundits.
Exactly.
And so, like that pressure of the Virginia Tech game is going to be scary, and then Tom Allen at Clemson, that scares me. They return like 90% of their production at Clemson. That scares me. I mean, Dabo Swinney, he's going to be in the playoff again, most likely. And I would be willing to bet he wins a first round game this year. I do believe Clemson's going to be that good.
Yeah, it's just fascinating how the narrative shifts because this time last year, we were all sitting here dismissing Clemson because they refused to use the portal. And now all of a sudden, Dabo just is Dabo and does his thing. I mean, granted, they brought in a handful of guys, but they're not out here giving every single player, $1 million like Alabama and Michigan and all these other schools are. But I think South Carolina's found a good balance between, using the portal for some immediate needs, but Shane Beamer is kind of the sort of grassroots guy, kind of like his father too, in the sense that he has a particular vision and he has a certain mold for that type of player. And I think you really see that instilled even when you hear him listen to interviews, particularly on like College Game Day, for example. You can just see the gleam in his eyes and the passion in his eyes, and that's kind of the vision that I think we've all been kind of longing for since the days of Steve Sparrow, for example.
Oh, absolutely. And the one thing I will say about that too is Shane Beamer has put a wall around the state. Clemson no longer gets a majority of the top 10 players from South Carolina. Shane Beamer has gotten 5 to 7 of the top 10 pretty much every year from the state of South Carolina. And he did it again with Zion Gillis,
Yes,
who just signed the other day.
Yeah, he's a dog.
To your point exactly, you have to have a culture that you build from the younger players. Give me a blank slate over somebody who has bad habits. So get these players young, develop that culture. But every once in a while, you will find a great veteran transfer player that comes in and supplements your roster just perfectly. Rocket Sanders, Kyle Kennard, Spencer Rattler. It's foundation, chemistry, culture, commitment, coaching, good competition, all of the dirty C words that I say. And Shane Beamer definitely has culture and loyalty for the players that he coaches in South Carolina, for sure.